Welcome to Brave Together Parenting, an empowering and truly helpful podcast for the parents of children with disabilities and all unique needs.
When he was born, anyone I would see that had any kind of difference in the street, there was nothing stopping me. I was driving, we're all from LA. I was driving down Santa Monica Boulevard. There was a Cost Plus, and I see a man without an arm walking into the Cost Plus. I literally made a U-turn, went into the parking lot, followed him into the store, cornered him, and I said, "Hey, you look like you have it together. You seem like a confident guy. Tell me, what did your parents do? What did your parents teach me? I just gave birth to a kid. He's missing limbs. Tell me what to do."
Welcome to Brave Together Parenting episode number 200. Can you believe it? Hi, everyone. It's Jessica Patay here, brave mom to an adult son with Prader-Willi syndrome, and I'm the founder of the nonprofit We Are Brave Together. To celebrate this milestone, we are interviewing the incredible parents of 2024 Paralympic Gold-Medalist Ezra Frech. His parents are Bahar Soomekh and Clayton Frech. Ezra was born with congenital limb differences, missing his left knee and left fibula, and fingers on his left hand. At 11 months, he received his first prosthetic leg. He quickly learned to walk and has been pursuing great things ever since. Clayton and Ezra co-founded Angel City Sports, which is a Los Angeles-based nonprofit that provides year-round sports opportunities for kids, adults, and veterans with physical disabilities or visual impairments. As a family, they have been on a mission to transform the way our country views disability and make those with disabilities feel unlimited. I can't wait for you to listen to this conversation. Susanna Lovell and Dr. Zoe Shaw and I co-hosted together this very special episode, and we loved our time with Clayton and Bahar. It was such a rich conversation, and they're so energizing to be around, so positive and so wise. And of course, we love their honesty and openness, and I know that you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. Thank you for celebrating 200 episodes and following and listening along. A quick reminder to always rate and review this podcast, share episodes with your friends, follow us on social media, and check out our episodes posted weekly on our We Are Brave Together YouTube channel. We will be back in the middle of January for season 8. Now, please enjoy our conversation with the dynamic couple, Bahar Soomekh and Clayton Frech. Hi, brave friends. Welcome to the 200th episode of this podcast, and we're so excited for the conversation today, and I can't wait for you to meet our guests. So why don't I go ahead and have you all introduce yourselves to our audience and tell a little bit of your story.
Sure. Bahar, you want to go?
You go ahead, honey.
So my name's Clayton Frech. I wear a lot of hats in the disability space. Most importantly, I'm a dad of Ezra Frech, and now two-time Paralympian, two-time gold medalist. I'm wearing Team USA jersey in honor of him and his accomplishments. I still sort of fit his size. But our family and friends and broader community started Angel City Sports, which provides free access to adaptive and Paralympic sports, really in Southern California. For now, that's been over a decade working on that. And Bahar and I have been sort of advocating for this community since Ezra's birth. She can share more about that. Also working on a documentary and help manage Ezra's career and some other athletes as well. So sort of do a lot of things in this space. So Bahar, you go.
Hello, everybody. So excited to be a part of episode 200. Yeah. How cool is that? My name is Bahar Soomekh. I am Ezra Frech's mother. I was an actress at the height of my career. I left the business because I had to get through Ezra's amputation and lots of occupational physical therapy and we can talk about that, to get my kid where he is today. I left my acting career, do a lot of life coaching for families going through difficult operations, difficulty navigating the life of building confidence in your child as they have differences in this world, as we all do. And we run our nonprofit and manage our son's career.
Wow. Very, very impressive. And I just want to thank Susanna and Zoe for being a part of this 200th episode as well. Do you want to say hello?
Yeah, no, I mean, I am so excited to be here. So my daughter, her name is Arizona, and I were glued to the screens this summer, and we were so taken by your son, I have to say. Like, he really, really, he just stood out, and now I can understand where his energy and confidence.
It's all mom.
Positive. I was going to say,
That's all mom.
and you're, but no. I mean, I'm telling you, like that intentionality that you must have instilled within him. First of all, that came out through you, from you, out of you into the sphere of raising your 3 boys. And so I can just, now it's all clicking into place. Like it's all making sense.
That is so kind. Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I am such a believer in energy and how we are with the beings around us and how impactful that can be. So I would love to jump in with a question if I can, or I know Dr. Zoe, she is also a former track and field star in her own right.
Zoe, Dr. Zoe.
But we have a little rivalry here because Ezra is USC, right? So Dr. Zoe was UCLA. Anyhow, it's neither here nor there.
Right.
So no, I had a question, and this is something, my daughter is so curious about others as well. And she's been talking about limb difference and the way that kiddos are born and people are born, and are things acquired or are they congenital? And so I'm just curious, when Ezra was growing up and he started talking about or recognizing his growing body and maybe realizing that he was different than others, what questions was he asking? What was sort of the terminology that you were using? What was your approach with him?
Excellent question. So it's interesting. I remember when he first noticed he was a little munchkin, and we were playing, and he was in a pack and play, and he pulled himself up with one leg. So as you know, Ezra's leg, when he was born, it was twisted. So he didn't have a knee and the leg was twisted. He had a perfect little foot. We had to amputate that leg to be able to put his leg into a prosthetic better and give him the mobility that was necessary without having a twisted leg in front of his body. And so he stood up, and then I mimicked him, and I was like doing what he was doing in the pack and play. And I saw him look down at my legs and then look down at himself. And it was this big moment where I was like, oh my God, my son just noticed, that he is different than me. His body looks different than me. And I was really worried about that. And what are the main things, and we can talk about when he was born, anyone I would see that had any kind of difference in the street, there was nothing stopping me. I was driving, we're all from LA. I was driving down Santa Monica Boulevard. There was a Cost Plus, and I see a man without an arm walking into the Cost Plus. I literally made a U-turn, went into the parking lot, followed him into the store, cornered him, and I said, hey, you look like you have it together. You seem like a confident guy. Tell me, what did your parents do? What did your parents teach me? I just gave birth to a kid. He's missing limbs. Tell me what to do. So I was constantly trying to get information, but ultimately I went to a child development specialist, and we created a script with her. And from a very young age, we put this script together, and we were the words for Ezra everywhere we went. We would use that script. So at a young age, he was hearing it over and over and over, and he didn't understand until he did understand. He was hearing the script so that when he was ready, he was going to be able to tell people his story because he's heard us say it. But I want to add something. I was in Italy. I was shooting Mission Impossible 3, and he was not even a month old. And we walked into a restaurant. I was still coming to terms with what is I never knew kids missing limbs. Like this was a whole new world for me, my first child. Like this was a very emotional roller coaster for me. And I was the height of my career. I'm obsessed with Tom Cruise. Like this was a big deal. I got to been playing Mission Impossible with him, and
The question goes back to Top Gun, by the way.
It all goes back to Top Gun.
Everything goes back to Top Gun.
Everything goes back to Top Gun. I can give you every scene from Top Gun. I was obsessed with Tom. Anyway, so I'm doing this film with him, and we went into a restaurant, and Ezra was with us. And the restaurant owners, because Italians are loving, he grabs Ezra and lifts him up in the restaurant and goes, "Bambino," like that. And his blanket falls off. And he sees my kid that doesn't have fingers and saw his twisted leg and literally gasped. And it was like you see in the movies where there's the broken record and it goes, and everyone is staring up and everyone's looking at him. And I'm a new mom. This is like a whole new world for me. Yeah. And I grabbed him and ran out of the restaurant, went back to our hotel and sobbed my eyes out. Like, what is the reality of my child going to be like? Right. And I cried and cried. And from that moment, everywhere we would go with Ezra, I would be always searching and looking for someone that was going to be staring at my child and give him a dirty look back. Like I was ready for a battle, like this angry person. And as I told you, we were doing interviews with people, anyone I could. And I had heard of a gentleman who lived down in San Diego, who my sister went to college with, didn't have an arm. And he was like the stud at high school, the stud in college. Every girl loved him, like big soccer player. And I was like, I need to meet this guy and find out what is his secret, like what's the secret sauce to making him so confident? I need that for my child. So we drove down to San Diego. We're having lunch with him. His name is Danny Gabriel. And we're at lunch and I said, "Danny, how do you deal with all these people staring at you? Don't you get angry? How do you deal with this?" And he said, "Bahar," he goes, "if people don't stare at me, I think they're kind of weird." And he goes, "Of course, why wouldn't they stare at me?" He's like, "if I'm sitting here cutting into a steak without a hand and I'm working it and cutting this steak, I would expect people to look because it's utterly fascinating to see a guy cut a steak with only one hand." And he goes, "That's what we do. We stare, we check people out." And it was this aha moment for me, right? That is what we do. People don't have ill intentions. Like kids are curious. People are curious. So we as a family shifted gears and we took that script and anywhere we went, any restaurant, we'd go for ice cream with Ezra, whatever it was, and people do stare. We never hid him. He wore shorts. He wore short shirts. You could see he, had a prosthetic leg. You could see he doesn't have fingers on his hand. And parents would be like, oh, and they would try to hide their kids from saying something inappropriate. And we would just jump in there, Clayton and I'd be like, "Hey, it looks like you're curious about Ezra. Come on over. Let me tell you a story." And that's what we did. From day one, after this meeting with Danny Gabriel, that's what we did forever. And because I wasn't angry, because Clayton wasn't angry, and we just were so open, that's how Ezra grew up. He didn't grow up being like, "Why is that person staring at me?" He'd be like, "Hey," as he got older, "are you curious about my leg? Come on over." And that is how we navigated this journey. No anger, expecting only the best intentions, and also like getting it. People feel nervous and uncomfortable. We just addressed it and it was over. And kids move on. They don't care. They go back on the playground and they move on. So that was the long answer to your question.
I would add just two quick thoughts that reinforce what Bahar just said. One is I learned personally on set actually in Italy to be proactive with communication and, share his disability right up front, because there was like a million extras on this movie and all the Italians love babies and they all kept coming up because I was the baby nanny on set. So I was carrying Ezra around. And I just realized like I'd rather call it out before they find it and get to react in their own manner. And so being proactive, and then the script really helped us because then we had alignment on the language and that everyone around him. So it wasn't like a bubble, but it was like a language bubble, right? And I think that's what helped him develop into the confident kid he is, because he, to Bahar's point, he heard the same words from us, from teachers, from coaches. Everyone kind of used the same language in talking about him if we needed to address it. But that proactive side was really helpful for us, I think, just as a family. And if you saw something, to Bahar's point, right, people are kind of staring, where we go talk to them. Like we're not letting this lie. So that was really, I think, the proactivity and really like a matter of fact tone, where you're just taking the emotion out. This is just a thing.
No big deal.
It happened, and we are fine with it. We're not overly emotional about it. We're not even emotional that you're reacting, but like we're going to kind of keep it super calm.
And by the way, the script was given to every teacher, every camp counselor, every administrator, any coach, any new environment we went to. This script went there. I would do the initial conversation. Do you have any questions? Do you feel comfortable? It was sent out to parents. They knew our words. We used the word helper leg. Then as he grew older, it's the prosthetic leg. Like these were all the stuff, but it was a lot of preparing beforehand. And so everyone felt comfortable.
Can you share the gist of the script with us?
Sure. It was something to the effect of, hey, looks like you're curious about Ezra. Do you want to come over? Well, Ezra was born different. You know, I think it was something like one of the things we dealt with younger kids, sometimes they would get scared that it would happen to them. And for me, I was like, you know, I was kind of offended, but little kids, like, they don't understand. Is this contagious? Are they going to get it too? Is their leg going to come off? So this is not going to happen to you. This is Ezra. Ezra was born. His leg was different. So he has this helper leg that helps him run and do things like you do. And then I said, but you know what? Do you have two eyes like Ezra? And they said, yeah. And I said, do you have one nose like Ezra? They're like, yeah. Do you have two ears like Ezra? They say, yeah. And I said, so look, there's all these things that are the same, just like Ezra, and some things that are different. But when we point and do things like that, if the kid did that, it hurts Ezra, and we don't want to hurt kids' feelings, you know, something to that effect. And literally by the time I'm like, two nose, two eyes. So there's so many things that are similar, just like Ezra, and some things that are different. And by that time they're like, they didn't care. The kids back, they'd run back onto the playground, you know? And then for parents, we had words. Like if we hear you speaking of Ezra as a tisk, like, oh, that poor kid or blah, blah, blah. We don't choose to view it that way. So if we hear an earshot of our child, you saying, you know, be nice to Ezra. It's hard for him or this or that. We will jump in. Please don't mind our disrespect. We're not trying to disrespect you. We're just trying to make sure that our son never views this as a poor thing kind of thing, right? Yes. Always building up.
Yeah, there was like a do's and don'ts section of like language we use, language we don't use, and then sort of a warning of like, hey, if we hear you using those words, we're going to call you out on it. Just
I would love a copy of the script to attach in the show notes. I know parents are going to be like, I really want to see that. I really want to see that.
And for the people that are in Los Angeles, it was Betsy Brown Braun. You know Betsy?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, this was a script. This is a script I made with Betsy.
Amazing.
So kudos to Betsy, because literally he was maybe just a couple of weeks old, and Betsy and Clayton and I worked on the script together. And honestly, another thing to Betsy, his amputation was a really gnarly and intense process. And I have to give her a lot of kudos for helping us get Ezra through it and helping me psychologically get through it, because we had some hard times in the ICU.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, is how did you navigate psychologically through all of this? Because you seem to have such a beautiful energy and perspective about this and about your son and about just all of it. And to watch your child struggle, I know, because, we all talk to a million parents all the time, to watch your child struggle or have pain, it's hard as a parent. So what did you do to build yourself up as you watched him go through surgeries and recoveries?
Clayton, you want me to jump in and
Yeah, these are right up your alley.
yeah.
Bahar and I have very complementary roles in parenting. So you're in Bahar's lane right now.
Well, one thing I do is I really believe, and this is what I do when I coach families as well, is I believe in a script. Everything I did with Ezra, especially in the younger years, was as if I was an actress performing a part of Ezra's mom, because I had to pull myself away. If I would look at him and see his struggles, I would want to start. I'm a very emotional person. I would just want to start crying hysterically. So for me, I created a script. And once again, we worked on the things that we said. We created a book. I mean, you all know this. This is like parenting 101, right? Like you create a book every time you leave to go out of town. I was shooting film, so I'd have to create a book. Mommy's going on an airplane. Here's a picture of the airplane. But I have this book, and it's very intense. It's the book that explains, we're going to have a surgery. We're going to remove your leg. We're going to do a toe to hand transplant, which was we took his big toe that we amputated from his foot, transplanted it to his hand so he could have opposition, right? Because he had two fingers that fused together. So it was one big finger and there was nothing else. So he was brilliant. As a kid, he would take his toys and put it against his chest. So that's how he would hold things. He would use his right hand to do stuff, but actually we think he was left-handed because he was so good with his left hand, but that was the hand that only had one finger, right? So he would take the toy with his right, put it against his chest and hold it with his left. And then he would do stuff, right? Kids adapt. They're brilliant, right? They figure these things out. So I created a script and I would make the book. And I would read the book to him over and over again. And I would be in a performance of what Ezra's mom needs right now. And let me tell you, the night before the amputation was hell, right? Like knowing the next morning I am taking my kid under a 15-hour, we didn't even know. We went to the hospital and there was people that their kids were at Children's Hospital in Boston. There were parents that were in there that morning with us, and their kids have long come out of surgery, long left, and it's night now, and we're still waiting, and he's still in surgery.
How old is he?
He was almost 3. He was almost 3 and very aware. Like Ezra's an old soul, and he was very aware of his body, his differences. We had a lot of talks, but the night before, to be like, I'm taking my beautiful child and giving him to you, and you are going to amputate his leg, do this toe to hand transplant, be under anesthesia that was an emotional ride. But what I learned through that experience is trusting your mama intuition, which I didn't trust before that. Now I'm like the queen. I can tell you what intuition means. But first time mom, and everyone's like, this doctor's the best. That doctor's the best. This procedure is the best. You don't know what to trust. Your head is spinning. But through that process, I learned to really know how to focus and be there for him. And once he went into surgery, then it was like, okay, and the crying and like, oh my God, let's get through this and mentally be strong for my kid. But it was a performance for me.
Bahar, I will give you a really, really quick addendum to the story that she just told, which is she's talking about that motherly instinct, and she has so many examples of how powerful and accurate that instinct is. But one where we really learned this lesson deep in our souls was we actually had his surgery scheduled for a different doctor, and were basically told some falsehoods along the way, and there was some smoke and mirrors, and we ended up canceling literally
hours before we were supposed to check him in because we couldn't sleep that night, right?
It was the wrong strategy. It was the wrong surgery.
Oh my
and
gosh.
we finally got that second opinion just ahead of when we were bringing him in. So yeah, crazy story. Hopefully it'll be a whole chapter in our parenting book if we ever can get around to writing it. But it was an incredible lesson for us because we literally I couldn't even work for the weeks leading up to that. I couldn't eat. We were tanking as humans. And that was all like, right, the universe pointing at this surgery that was not right.
Honey, I think that's really critical to talk about and share with mamas is everything in the world. And as a coach, Susanna, you can speak to like connecting with something within you, everything like physically we were ill. We were ill, like on the toilet, sick to our stomach. And the difference between, and when we canceled that operation from a doctor who was going to do an experiment, he was experimenting on our child. And forever, I will never, ever forgive this doctor, ever. He lied to us. But as soon as we just had the guts to say, no, we're not going to do this, and cancel this surgery with a very prestigious doctor, by the way, in Los Angeles, when we canceled it, it was the release and the feeling of utmost euphoria came over us. And that's when you know, okay, this is what intuition is. When you feel sick like that, that isn't right. That's the universe, or whatever you want to call it, saying this is not right for you. And fast forward, when we did go to Boston with this surgeon, I rolled him into surgery. And I can't tell you the peace I felt, because I knew we were in the right place, in the right hands. And when they shut the doors and I walked away, I felt like connected to something higher and better. And I knew my child was being protected and the right thing was happening. And that's intuition that you can't explain, but you can feel, and mamas and dads need to really tap into.
Wow. Thank you so much for reminding our listeners about their intuition, because especially as moms who are being inundated by all these experts, right, who are supposed to know better than we do, of course, and we've got to try to navigate all of these things, it's really easy for us to just dismiss our intuition. And thank you for reminding them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Dr. Zoe, you're so right. And and I think the information overload of the world, to your point, and everyone's an expert. I mean, going back to this doctor, everyone told us he's the best. He's the best. He's in LA. He's in your backyard. He's the best. And so we thought, okay, he's the best. He must be the one for us. But he wasn't, So you're right, Dr. Zoe.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. When I interviewed Caroline Cupp, she talked about how she never wanted to be seen as someone special, that she just wanted to fit in and be normal. And I know as a mom, I've struggled, and I talked to Caroline about this because there's this line between, if we really just try to ignore the disability, then we are doing a disservice to our child, because it's almost like a gaslighting experience, trying to put them in this abled world and not addressing that. Yet at the same time, we don't want to put all of our attention on the disability. So how did you guys in a day-to-day way walk that line between allowing him to, or encouraging him to feel like he fit in, and yet really honoring the specialness and uniqueness of who he is?
Wow, that's a beautiful question, Dr. Zoe.
Really good question. Yeah, I'm happy to take a swing at this, Bahar. You can clean it up at the end. I think that it really varies on the kid, because in Ezra's case, he was this incredibly skilled athlete. We got him a running blade from 4 years of age on. And so he could integrate into, physical activities and sport very easily. He always thought he was an athlete. This kid came out of the womb thinking about sport. Like ball was his first word. It was not mom or dad. Like ball was the first word. And so sport and activity and using his body in whatever ability he had was always really important to this kid from the earliest days. And so because he's an amputee, and because he had a running blade, so he was almost as fast, if not faster, than some of the kids when he was younger, he could integrate from a sports standpoint. And that was a huge part of his character development, was being able to integrate, having buddies, and really being challenged. Playing against able-bodied kids forced him to really level up from a sports standpoint. And you see the same seriousness translating into the Paralympic movement now that he had as a little guy. Like, he was going to out-train you, he was going to outsmart you. Like, IQ in sport is incredibly high for this kid. But what I think was interesting about, I was sort of the main person pushing sport and trying to figure sport out for this kid, is we since early days would complement his integration into able-bodied sport with connecting to the broader disability community. And so whether it was an amputee camp, like Camp No Limits, or going to adaptive sporting events, or even just general disability events, like, we made sure he saw the community. He had mentors, that he had people to look up to, not just in sport, but sort of broader disability. And so I think that this is the parent's job, is to sort of monitor how the soul is doing of our children. And when it's low, you need to make sure that they remember they're part of this big, beautiful community full of love and empathy and acceptance, because the day-to-day stuff is hard. And so, again, in his case, he was able to integrate into sports so he could be doing more of that maybe than others, but he still got regular doses of community and disability and amputees. I mean, we took him like amputee expos, where it's like kind of boring for a kid, but he's just surrounded by amputees. So I think finding that balance, and I don't know that one strategy works for all kids, but there's something about that, because he always knew tons of amputees. They weren't at school.
Right.
They weren't playing basketball with him, but he knew them.
Mm-hmm. Clayton, I love what you just said there. And what I would add is what we find is owning your story. Like, one of the biggest thing that we do with our community, through our nonprofit and families that we work with, is, what is your story? Because everybody, and ladies, you can reinforce it. Like, if you can share who you are, what your story is, it kind of reinforces your self-confidence and pride in who you are, right? So that if you do choose to share it, you have the words and you can say it with your head up high, right? Mm-hmm. And that fosters this confidence, so that you might want to, in a group of people, be like, hey, yeah, I'm in school with you, but do you know my story? And what I've seen is, like, we call ourselves like disability, like missionaries. Whenever we see someone with any kind of gait difference or in a wheelchair, we'll chase them down and we'll be like, hey, do you know about Angel City Sports? Like, we're kind of, we want to bring people into the community. And there was a lovely family I met out in Ralph's. I chased them through the supermarket, and the mother kept saying to me, no, and her daughter had braces, and she had, right, Clayton? She had,
yeah, several.
And the mother kept telling me, my daughter doesn't do sports. My daughter doesn't do sports. And I'm like, please just come to our event. Please come. You'd never know. And now, after years and years of being with us, she sees herself as an athlete. She wants to go to the Paralympics. The confidence in this girl. But I remember the first few times she came to our events, I would interview her. And no one's ever asked her story. She never got to truly verbalize what makes her special and unique. And there's power in that. And finding her voice, telling her story, instead of hiding in the background, she started sharing more in school, finding more friends through that process. It transformed her, right? So to Clayton's point, you could choose, and every kid's different, but being able to celebrate them and make sure that they feel pride in who they are and their stories has made a huge impact on our community.
Beautiful.
That is making a huge impact on me, right? No. I'm just thinking about me. What is my story? How am I telling my story? That's really very powerful. So good.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in all of us, not just our children, but we all have a story to share, and we kind of rehearse it and in the process take pride in who we are and the journey we've gone on.
Well, and you've heard this said that storytelling is the commerce of human connection. It's our vulnerability and our honesty and our owning our story and sharing it really breeds beautiful connections. And that's what we all want.
Beautifully put. You're right, Jessica. Yes.
Okay, so I have a question. Clearly you had intuition about which doctor, was the wrong doctor and his experiment and what he wanted to do. Did you ever have a second guess, were you second guessing yourself on whether you should do a surgery? Or was it always, we're going to do the surgery, these types of surgeries, we know we're going to, we feel confident about that, we just have to find the right person? Was that kind of your journey, or did you ever second guess whether we should do any of these surgeries?
I think, Clayton, you want to talk about this, because there was a big struggle with us here.
Yeah, curious what you're thinking about struggle wise. But so what's fascinating about our journey, and it has a connection back to Angel City Sports, is when we left Cedars-Sinai, where Ezra was born, we actually had a pretty good game plan from a medical standpoint. Again, a lot to process in the moment, being 2 days past birth, but we were told to go to Shriners for prosthetics, and the doc, an orthopedic surgeon who was sort of our, kind of guide while we were in the hospital, said, before he has memory, so ideally before he's 3, you'd want to remove that lower part of the limb and try to take a toe or two, put it on his hand, give him opposition. So we actually had a kind of medical strategy. Again, it wasn't super, super specific, but it was sort of the broad outlines of a kind of medical game plan for Ez that we, over time, followed. I would say there were moments where we were presented with surgical strategies and options that felt too innovative, too risky. And so we explored limb lengthening. His forearm is shorter. The ulna is shorter on the left side. So we debated, do we do limb lengthening?
Which is a very painful process for children. Very, very painful.
Yeah. And they end up being sick and in the hospital so much, right? They're always recovering from the surgery. It's pretty brutal. But we also had some more experimental approaches to the toe to hand transplantation that we had to sort of digest and sort of work through. So I would say there was a lot of moments where we were struggling with the right path. And I think Bahar and I, thankfully, we think very differently and approach things very differently, but we tend to really find the right strategy over time together. And these are moments that I think I'm really proud of, that she and I worked through these. I mean, these are heavy, heavy decisions, because also when you're amputating that lower limb and you have this foot to work with, it's one shot. You have one shot.
Babe, that's what I was going to say. And I think you articulated that beautifully when we were going through it, where you kept saying, like, this is a lot. It's a huge burden because we're making a decision that is going to shape the way our child looks for the rest of his life. Right? So to Clayton's point, we were meeting with doctors that had all these experimental ideas. We talked to doctors around the world. We're not just just within the United States. Some doctors talked about remember this one group said, let's amputate his whole foot and make it a foot hand. Like his other hand would just be a whole foot. Like all these ideas. And you're like, oh my gosh, and talk about anxiety provoking. Being bombarded and having to make a decision for this little munchkin, this little baby. Am I doing a foot hand? Am I taking 3 toes? Am I taking 1 toe? All of this stuff. And I think the point that Clayton made back then was, this is really hard because we're making a decision about how his body is going to look for the rest of his life, right? And so this was feeling overwhelmed, and how do you choose? And one thing we did, which was really interesting, any doctors we knew, friends that were doctors that we trusted, they didn't have to be orthopedic doctors, but people we knew, we actually had like a board of directors where we would present what these doctors were telling us so that we would get their opinions. What do you think? Does this sound ridiculous? Like, we got a board of directors that would, give us their perspective, doctors that we trusted, that were friends of ours, so we can sort of help navigate all this influx of information that we really were struggling to make some big decisions. We ultimately made them, but it made a big difference to have that guidance. Don't you agree, Clayton?
Definitely. Yeah, I feel really blessed that we had a community of docs to sort of guide us and support us.
Mm-hmm. What would you guess that Ezra, maybe he has already said this out loud many times, that he appreciates about you both?
What a question.
Clayton, what do you think? I think he appreciates, we manage his career, but we've, since he was young, collaborated, all 3 of us, and everything. So he really turns to us like, I'm still mama, right? So I'm still like the nurturing, loving mom, but he's older now. So he doesn't need even though this kills me, as much of the smooches and the hugs and stuff, but he really values our perspective on stuff and in navigating big decisions. We all work together as a team a lot. Even if he's in college, we're on talking business, talking about next steps. He's a motivational speaker, so he's constantly out. So we're all working and collaborating together. He looks to his father. Listen, both of us left our careers to serve the disabled community. We left everything to be of service to this community. But Clayton left his job and is full-time, like running Angel City Sports. That makes our son really take pride in what his father is doing for not just him, but for the 15% of the world population that has some kind of physical disability. He takes a lot of pride, I believe, in the work his father and I and our family, his brothers have made mega sacrifices to be able to. It's not just Clayton and I. His brothers are a big part of this, and a lot of sacrifices made. So I think he really feels grateful and proud of our family. Clayton, what would you add to that?
I would just add, I mentioned it, but like Bahar and I have incredibly different perspectives and approaches. And we're both good at really different things. And so I think between the two of us, we can kind of tackle anything that comes his way. If it's operational logistics, that tends to be my sort of strength, strategy, et cetera. But Bahar's really creative and she's amazing and reading the room, and the public speaking is all her. That's all her. Like his ability to articulate himself in public, which is a huge part of his brain. It's a huge part of his trajectory, is how comfortable he is in front of people, in front of the camera. It doesn't matter just spoke to 110,000 people live in Zoom. Like, who does that? Like, that's an enormous number of people. And like, the kid just never gets nervous. This is Bahar, right? So we're so complementary in how we parent and even just how we live our lives that I think he knows he can come to us for pretty much anything. Between the two of us, we got him.
I'm like, can I rate you as my parents? It's really inspiring to hear you both. You are both so kind to one another and complimentary of one another, and seem like you have such a unity that I'm sure at times you had to fight for, because this is not an easy journey.
No, it wasn't an easy journey. And, if you look at statistics, I think when there's a disability or any kind of issue with the birth of a child, I think it does put a burden on the marriage. And it was hard for us in the beginning, for sure. Like, we're not going to pretend that it was easy. There's a lot of beyond the sleepless nights and your cray-cray as a mother. And now you're navigating like, what? We have to amputate our kid's leg and something called a toe-to-hand transplant, and nursing and sleep deprivation and, scared, like real fear. It has its impact, but it's been quite a ride, and it's made our marriage and our relationships stronger. And so, but it was definitely hard, right? It was hard in the beginning, as is with every family. I mean, come on, we all deal with it. Everyone deals with it. It's not like being a parent is hard, throw in like, now you're dealing with major surgery and stuff like that. It gets even more complicated.
Right. Absolutely. Susanna, were you going to ask something?
Well, just personally, be selfish here. So I'm so curious about your decision and if it was an intentional decision to have more children, because I made the decision to not have another child. And I battled with that for such a long time. Like, am I enough if I only have one child? Right. And my husband and I ended up getting divorced, and I had to ask myself, I wonder if I had given him more children, would he have stayed? And so I am just curious and wondering how that decision came up for you two in terms of, okay, you know what? We want to expand our family,
Yeah. Excellent question. I think we always knew we wanted more than one. We wanted Ezra to not be on the journey of life on his own, just because I'm best friends with my sister. She is my soul sister. We're connected. We have the same dreams. It's crazy how connected we are.
Don't play them in trivia because they somehow
Yes,
know.
we read each other's minds. Yes, we did. But I just knew I knew he needed siblings, and I knew that it was important, and we wanted a bigger family. But it didn't mean, Susanna, like we were terrified when I was pregnant. Every time we were definitely scared and nervous, and ultrasounds, because to this day, we don't know what it was, what the situation was, what happened. We don't know. The doctors don't know. And it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, right? It is, we named him Ezra. Do you know what Ezra means? By any chance? So we named him Ezra when he was born. Ezra means the teacher, the helper.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, you child, you're going to teach this world about how rich and beautiful it is in its diversity, in its differences. You're going to be the leader in teaching that world. I believe our names have power, and he's lived up to that name. And we always knew that he would lead, and we were going to give him all the tools and a support system of siblings. And by the way, our focus can't just be on Ezra, right? We have other kids, and we need to celebrate them and build them up and make them feel a lot of pride, and not deal with, which you kind of see with siblings, jealousy. That was really important, that we raised the kids to all feel like they're one on this journey together, and nothing's more important than their brotherhood. Clayton, what would you add to that?
No, you touch on it's an important parenting issue. Bahar and I get asked these questions all the time about how do you prioritize, how do you allocate parental resources? And I think that if any parent of a kid with special needs or disability, they're going to be honest, it takes more parenting resources. There's no way around that. So owning that and realizing it and doing your best to lean into the other kids and giving them as much of the same support system as possible is and kind of our approach. And Bahar is really good at like reinforcing like their jobs within the three boys, like your job as the youngest is this, and then like kind of making sure they see the connectivity. But, we also take, when we can, we go as a family to events, especially now Ezra's on the international stage last few years, when we can do it, we take the whole family. So everyone gets to benefit, from Ezra's career a bit.
And Susanna, but to your point, it was scary to make that decision for the next two kids on what if this happens again? I mean, we knew we could handle it if we needed to, because we had the tools and we've done it. But, it was hard. It was definitely, we were nervous. But one thing I would add about the siblings is we really make it a thing to actually acknowledge and talk a lot. I'm a big talker, maybe too much, and drives the kids nuts. But owning up to like, I'm sorry, we're spending a lot of time dealing with your brother's this or your brother's that, or, you must feel like you're not getting as much as attention. Is that right? Are you feeling that way? What can we do? So there was a lot of talking so that the kids never felt like they were invisible because their brother was such a big presence in the house and in the community and in the world and on the world stage.
I admire that. I'm very, very passionate about the siblings' experience, and Luke and Kate are now 24 and 19, and they've taught me a lot in the last years. And we did some family therapy to talk about, what it was like to grow up with Ryan. And I thought Chris and I were very intentional, and there are still some repercussions. There's beautiful ones. They're empaths, and they are patient, and they are sensitive, and just amazing humans, and there are repercussions, and there are things that we can't control and we can't completely make right, no matter how intentional we are.
Right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Is there something that you wish somebody would have said to you early on, or what you would say to parents who are in the early days, weeks, years?
Oh, that's a great question. Honey, you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, I have a quick and easy answer on this one. Bahar will come up with a more thoughtful one. But for me, in my personal journey as a dad, I thought being a good dad was being active and outside with your kids, playing, hiking, beach, surfing, whatever. And I grew up surfing in Santa Barbara. And unfortunately, my dad was not a surfer, but he took us to the beach all the time, and we were always outside doing things with him. And so I thought that had been taken away from me when Ezra was born. And I was just wrong. I was called blind or ignorant. I didn't understand that someone with a disability could do pretty much everything and anything that they want. They might do it differently. And so I think that simple message, and it could probably apply beyond sport, it's sort of, the world is still there. Everything is still on the table. Again, it might be done differently. You have workarounds, you have to adapt, whatever. But I think that was probably the message that I needed to hear leaving the hospital. And listen, I feel really blessed that we found adapt to sports pretty quickly within a few months. And so I didn't have to live years in that place of thinking that, my ability to be a good dad had been taken away. But I think that's, and dedicating a decent chunk of my life to this community and making sure that they really see and experience what's possible. I think that's a really important construct for the disabled community, special needs community, to know everything's still on the table. It's just going to be it might look a little different.
Thank you.
That's excellent, baby. That was true. And by the way, we found sports because of you, because you put your head down and found this community. I mean, I would just add to that. It was very interesting when he won his 2 gold medals. I was having these flashes of his childhood, like everything was flashing in my head. I was really, really emotional when he won, and we're there in Paris, 70,000 people, the stand screaming, and our kid just won a gold medal. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, 19 years ago, being in that hospital room when they said, your child, they're like, something's wrong. And they showed me my baby, with his leg and his hand, and you're going to have to amputate. And I remember the fear of what is his life going to be like for this kid. And if someone could have said to me, don't worry, Mom, one day your kid, 19 years later, is going to represent the United States and win 2 gold medals for this country and change people's perceptions of what someone with a disability can do, and change people's perceptions in general about differences and the value of us celebrating those things. If someone could say that to me, it would have been that's what makes me emotional. But it was such a remarkable moment to say, and this is what I say to other families, is like, your kid will rock your world, and you'll be surprised how much this child is going to be. To your point, Jessica, you're going to learn from your children. You're going to grow from your children, and they will make you proud. God willing, they will make you proud because you are such a good parent and you'll know what to do.
Thank you for that. Thank you both so much. I'm so glad that we had this opportunity. You've been a huge inspiration to me, and I know it's going to be great for our audience of parents. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for including us. Nice to meet you, Dr. Zoe. Nice to meet you, Susanna.
All right. Thank you, and take good care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, all. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening today. Do us a favor and leave us a review and a rating so that this podcast can get into the ears and the hearts of more and more moms. Did you know that Brave Together Parenting Podcast is an extension of our nonprofit organization, We Are Brave Together? We Are Brave Together serves an international community of caregiving moms, offering support groups that are virtual and in-person, educational resources, and low-cost weekend retreats. And we have published our first anthology of caregiving stories entitled Becoming Brave Together, Heroic, Extraordinary Caregiving Stories from Mothers Hidden in Plain Sight. It will encourage and validate every parent caregiver. To join us today, go to wearebravetogether.org. Our support and sisterhood awaits you. Brave Together Parenting Podcast is for entertainment and education purposes only. It's not a substitute for professional care and should not be relied on for medical or mental health advice. The use of any content on our podcast, links, show notes, or on our website is to be done at your own personal risk. Please seek out a professional to assess your own medical or mental health concerns, because we are all beautifully complex and the content of this podcast is for a broad audience.